There's one thing that I have noticed with Fire Emblem Engage out now at this point is that the fans are at a crossroads, but I think that it's very healthy discussion because there's something that was incredible in the video that I did recently on the channel, over 500 comments, and as I went through each comment reading, there is definitely a divide that I wanted to discuss with Fire Emblem, but I think it's actually a good thing, and it spawned a lot of healthy conversation and something that we absolutely have to talk about when it comes to Fire Emblem Engage, in addition to the Fire Emblem franchise and the future. Now, one thing's for sure, people are excited as heck for Fire Emblem Engage. Whether you're on the social fake persona side fence, and I say that jokingly, or you're on the old school Fire Emblem side fence, or you're right there in the middle, people are excited to jump back into a fantastic Fire Emblem game after it's been a number of years since Fire Emblem Three Houses, and we're doing it in better quality and better audio and better everything with Fire Emblem Engage. So that's exciting. People, despite arguing, are really excited to jump into Fire Emblem and just play a great game, because regardless of what you think about the controversial review scores and what some of the reviewers were docking points from, the game is still really good. Most people felt the game is great. It still got a good score on Metacritic, 82 plus average, so that is absolutely not bad. It's very good. Now, another thing is that the gameplay in this Fire Emblem game, now that more people have been playing it, we've been getting a bit more feedback. It's obviously officially out now at this point. This might have the best gameplay in series history. So if you want to know more about Fire Emblem and what makes this so great, is that I think everyone that's playing this game right now at this point kind of sees the quality that's being put into it, the sound effects, the UI, the quality of life features, the chapters, the map, everything that's kind of put together in Fire Emblem Engage is really unlike any other franchise. We don't get many games like Fire Emblem Engage or like the Fire Emblem franchise, and when they do come out, they're just quite not as good. XCOM's been a while. Yeah, we have the Marvel game, which is still pretty good, the card-based one, but there isn't a lot of strategy RPGs, in my opinion, that goes where Fire Emblem goes, and especially with this new game, Fire Emblem Engage. So the gameplay, when it comes to the focus being on that, is back. I think that a lot of the things that kind of frustrated some people with Fire Emblem Three Houses and previous Fire Emblem games have been improved upon and made even better. Now, for me, it would be the hard mode on Fire Emblem Three Houses and not being able to grind out missions and do different things in that respect on hard. Now, if you're on normal, you can, or if you're on easy, you can, but on hard mode, the constant push forward with the calendar and with the activity points kind of got grating a little bit, just a little bit, especially if you're doing 3 playthroughs of the game or more. Whereas with Fire Emblem Engage, we've got a straight up Fire Emblem game where gameplay is the focus, the combat is there, and it's never been better, smoother, look better, all of that. So I think that's something that fans on both sides of the fence can kind of come to agreement with and shake hands on. This game has incredible gameplay, and that's very important in a strategy RPG. So that is awesome. Now, we've got to talk about the story, right? Now, the story, there are some people who don't like the story, and we're going to go into no spoilers here, guys, so don't worry, don't click off the video. There are some people who don't like the story and the characters. There are some people who do like the story and their characters. There are some people who feel that there's too much leaning on the Emblem characters and how you talk to them. Then there's others that say, oh, okay, well, there's not enough of the other characters. So it's kind of all over the place. It's mixed a little bit. Maybe not quite the focus of the old Fire Emblem games, to be direct, but then again, not quite enough of the new Fire Emblem games. So somewhere in like no man's land, right? Where it's somewhere in between and not as good as what we've seen before, or kind of what we've seen before, like in the past, like the current or the past. So I think personally, based off of what I've seen here, I'm going to enjoy the story. I don't think that I'm going to have a bad time with the story, because it's one thing about stories, people are super subjective in terms of what they like or don't like. You've always got to experience it yourself and kind of say, okay, this is what I think. So let me give you guys a perfect example of this. Shin Megami Tensei 5. A lot of the hardcore Shin Megami Tensei base say that that game has a terrible story, that it's not very good, it's not involved enough and all that. And I played it. I put 140 hours plus into it. I did all of the secret stuff, pretty much did most of the content in the game. I got the secret ending and I was like, yo, this secret ending's incredible. This story's awesome. And I was kind of like shocked when people were like, yo, this story sucks compared to the previous ones. And I'm like, I guess, but I love this story. So I think that that's how this game is going to be. There are going to be people who don't like it, who feel that it's not involved enough, who feel that there's not enough waifu dating time or tea time or whatever the case is, right? And there's going to be people who love it for its minimalist but direct approach as well. So I'm not necessarily the one who's going to sit there and say, oh, like the story's terrible just because this person says it or whatever the case is. Everybody experience the story, whatever you feel, however you feel about it, that's fine by me. But that's something that you just got to know about the game beforehand when it comes down to it. Now, another thing about this is that this game will draw in new players. It will absolutely draw in new players. It's a strategy RPG, but it's one done with so much style and grace. I think that it's appealing to people who don't normally look at Fire Emblem and who have a Nintendo Switch and want something to play, because it's going to be a while before The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, going to be a little bit before Kirby. That's also a Wii remaster. We don't really have much big in between that. There's the Bayonetta game that's coming out. We don't know when Advance Wars is coming out. So there isn't anything too major when it comes to the typical Nintendo games that people are always buying, like a Mario and all of that. So I think that there's going to be a lot more people interested in this game because you hear Fire Emblem and the name all over the place, and I think people are going to try it out. It also helps that Fire Emblem Heroes is out there and doing a cross promotion, and there are people that are getting notifications for Fire Emblem Heroes about this game as well, with the Lear, where does the characters come from in the mobile game. They can say, okay, well, maybe I'll check it out on the Nintendo Switch. So I think it's going to draw new players. I think you're going to have the typical old school Fire Emblem fans coming back based off of how the game plays. I think new school fans are probably going to pick it up, but begrudgingly when it comes to certain things in the game, especially if you loved the social aspects and all of that in Fire Emblem Three Houses. But once again, I talked about it in my video yesterday. It was funny seeing certain like core Fire Emblem fans dance on the grave of Fire Emblem Three Houses, but also bring up very valid points, which I talked about even back then in my review. I love the game. I think it's fantastic, but some of the stuff, yeah, a little bit of fluff. The stuff is fluff when it comes down to it on some of these things. And yeah, I don't necessarily like to go through a game and play it through and have social stuff where I have to repeat that 3 separate times, because there's 3 campaigns and having to repeat social stuff on each one just isn't fun. Like, I get it can be cool on the first one through, but 3 times and having to do all that, I just started spamming gifts to all the people just so I can join my team on my second and third playthrough. And even on my first playthrough, I stopped trying to talk and go date time and tea time and all that and just started spamming gifts just so they can come over to my side. So I feel that with this game, it's a nice mix up, it's a change up. Everything doesn't have to be the same. And I think I talked about that in yesterday's video. A lot of you guys said, you know what, OJ, you're right about that. It doesn't have to be. Like, we can have an alternating type of thing. And I also want to point out one more thing here, guys. I'm sorry about the whole Unity engine thing. It's not open source. It's definitely owned by people. And you can use it free up until a certain amount. I think it's like $100,000 or so. Don't 100% quote me on that one, but it's some amount of money before you have to start paying afterwards. So obviously, Intelligent Systems is going to have to pay to use that engine, because the game is going to make well more than $100,000 or whatever the limit is or the minimum is for that. It's obviously going to do that with all of the pre-orders and the sales of the game so far. Number 1 on the Japanese eShop, rising up the US eShop, number 1 on Amazon in Japan, also in the US and multiple other countries as well. So it makes complete sense there. So sorry about that, guys. I like to get you guys good information, and I was wrong on that one. So I'm terribly sorry about that, and I'll try to make sure that does not happen again. But I do think that even if you look at it, what I was saying at its core level does make sense. Gust, Koei Tecmo, not involved in this one. No cut going to them when it comes to the development or paying. And on top of that, they are using Unity. They're not using like Unreal Engine or something else that could be more expensive when it comes down to it. So I think that for them and Unity, as the more that I research that engine, I think it makes sense for the type of game that they're trying to make. And I feel that that's the reason why the game looks so much better than what we got with Fire Emblem Three Houses. I think that it was good for them. Reading on how easy Unity is, how you can build the game pretty quickly, you have some good assets and stock and stuff. Like, it is a good engine for what they're doing. It's not a super massive open world game to have top end graphics or anything like that. Clean cut type of game. I think that they made the right call now that we have the game in our hands and we're playing. I think that was definitely the right call to use Unity, and it worked out for everyone involved, Intelligent Systems and Nintendo. And I do want to touch again on something that I said after reading the comments. I think that there's room for both styles of Fire Emblem games, and I feel that going forward they can continue to do what they've done with Fire Emblem Three Houses and even Fire Emblem Fates, and you can make it something to where if you want to do the relationships, it's there for you, or you can skip it. Obviously, there is a huge benefit by doing that, but make it to where there's other ways to get around it. But I feel that it should be an optional thing in a lot of these games. However, if there is another Fire Emblem game and they want to focus on the combat and the gameplay, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't feel that a Fire Emblem game should be judged on whether it has it or not. And that's what some of the reviewers and some of the anger came from people saying, well, why is it being judged that way when there's been multiple Fire Emblem games where that's not a part of it. Now, obviously that plays a part into the characters and if you like them or not or whatever the case is, and I completely get that. But there were a number of reviews that did mark it down because it wasn't like Three Houses, and that it did focus on the combat and it did focus on the story in terms of a singular path and didn't have all that. But some people didn't see that as a negative. They saw that as a big positive, getting back to that singular path Fire Emblem and really fine-tuning that core gameplay, which Fire Emblem is absolutely known for around the world, that core strategy RPG gameplay. So I feel there is room for both. You can have a game like Fire Emblem Engage, which pairs back the social elements. They still have them. You still have support conversations. You still have the letters for them. You still have different things that you can do, but it's not super focused in on marriage and all this other stuff that the previous games have done before. You can have that, or a game that doesn't have them, and it can still be a fantastic game that can be judged on its own merits. And you can also have a game like Fire Emblem Awakening, which has marriage and children, or Fire Emblem Fates, which has relationships and also all of that, and Fire Emblem Three Houses, which has tea time and so much other stuff that you can do. You can have both, and I think that they should be judged on that. So we'll see how that works out going forward in the future. But overall, I think that Fire Emblem Engage finally being out is exciting for fans out there. And I do want to give you guys just a little bit more information on what I'm going to be doing. So I should have at least a few streams of the game, and if they do well, maybe I'll continue. I will have beginner and also expert content, moderate expert content for you guys on the channel. So if you're someone looking to learn how to play Fire Emblem, I'll definitely have that for you. And then I'll also have an unboxing of Fire Emblem Engage, the Divine Edition. Shout out to Nintendo, they did get me that. But I also have another copy at Best Buy that I need to go pick up. So very excited about that, because that Divine Edition, I want that poster that's in there. Maybe I'll put it up in my room somewhere. But yes, I want to get into that. So Fire Emblem Engage, there's a lot to go over. It's kind of surprising to see the kind of conversation that we had. It really kind of shocked me when it comes down to it, but I think that it was good and it was healthy and it wasn't really toxic. That's the great thing about it. Fire Emblem fans were actually being pretty nice to each other in the comment section and having some good discussions. Now, there were some things, but overall it was pretty good. So awesome stuff there, guys. I really appreciate that. Let's talk about something else that maybe some of you guys might not appreciate, but it's something that I've been saying quite a bit on this channel, and that is there is still a lot more for the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo will reportedly boost Switch production in 2023 because of sustained demand. It's almost like I was telling you guys that sales are still there, and a lot of this stuff that people were trying to say is because of a little bit more of a chip shortage, and things will pick back up because of big games coming, heading straight into what they're doing next. I've talked about this, but let's get into the article here. So Nintendo Switch still selling well, production is still going. Now, according to a new report from Bloomberg, the Kyoto-based video game giant plans to increase production of the hybrid machine in its 6th year after shifting roughly 21 million systems in the previous fiscal year. Although it lowered its sales forecast to 19 million last November, the company is now apparently convinced it can manufacture more units. Now, the same report, sourcing, quote, people familiar with the matter, goes on to state Nintendo has already told suppliers and assembly partners about its plans to churn out even more Switch units in the coming fiscal year, beginning this April. At this stage, there's no target number that has been revealed, and Nintendo will adjust its production accordingly depending on a demand for the system. Now, currently, Nintendo's plans suggest that there will be sustained demand for at least another year. A Nintendo spokesperson reportedly declined to comment about the latest development. Now, as of September 30th, 2022, the Nintendo Switch has shipped more than 114 million units worldwide, and it's gearing up for another big year with titles like Pikmin 4 and The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, analysts have also chimed in claiming a Zelda-themed Switch would definitely entice existing console owners to buy another unit in 2023, and we had the leaked images of the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom OLED model last year late. So let's talk about this, because this has become kind of big online, because you've seen things here and there from people saying that things are kind of slowing down and Nintendo's kind of winding down to something else. We need to hurry up and bring out something because sales are going down, and that's not the case. I was trying to tell you guys that there was absolutely a chip shortage which affected even their production. Despite there being Switches on store shelves, there are still so many people buying the Nintendo Switch. It's still selling really well, so they're going to transition this thing incredibly smoothly. Now, the plan, in my opinion, is going to be to have the Nintendo Switch for 2023. You have The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, you have Metroid Prime 4, you have Pikmin 4, you still have Fire Emblem 4 or Genealogy of the Holy War remake that's coming. You have Metroid Prime Remaster. I mean, you're going to have other games to fill out the back half of 2023. And then in 2024, you're going to start gearing up completely as you finish up the next generation Switch 2 games. Monolith Soft is working on a game. Obviously, you have the Mario team working on a game. You have other teams within Nintendo working on games, and those games are getting ready. Nintendo wants to make sure that when they launch this next system, it launches with a great continuation of games, very similar to how the Nintendo Switch launched back in 2017 with The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild right there at launch, and then the following month you had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, then the following month or so you had Splatoon, and you had ARMS, and you had more games just coming out every single month or so. There was always something new to play first party wise. Then they ended off the year with a bang with Super Mario Odyssey and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and they want the same thing for the Nintendo Switch 2. They don't want there to be a big drought in games. They know that's a killer for a system. So I feel that backwards compatibility, being able to play these games that are coming out late and having a library for people to pick up if they somehow missed the Switch 1 and wanted to get Switch 2, they can pick up Tears of the Kingdom and enjoy it on their new system, in addition to playing the new games that are coming out. Probably a mix of indie games, third-party Japanese titles, and of course Nintendo big first-party titles like a brand new Mario Kart, for example, or a brand new 3D Mario game. Those could all be big launch titles for the next gen Nintendo Switch in 2024. We might even get an announcement in 2023 and a launch in early 2024, or we could get an announcement in 2024 early and a launch late in 2024. There are reports going all over the place, but I personally feel that this is the strategy that Nintendo is going to take, because the Nintendo Switch business is still a multi-billion-dollar business, and they're not just going to drop that out of nowhere. They're going to transition it, and they're going to want to sustain that because you just don't drop that many people that still have the system. You make the backwards compatibility option, obviously that's going to be a thing, and you make it to where people can still buy their games on the new system like they've done for pretty much every system that's been successful in their history on a handheld or portable base. Heck, even sometimes when it's not so successful, but still having the option to buy those games because Nintendo has evergreen titles is something Nintendo is absolutely interested in continuing from a business perspective. So we'll see how it all works out this year. I think it's going to be incredibly exciting with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, we've got Fire Emblem Engage. We've got Bayonetta that's coming out, the Origins game. We've got Kirby, and there's going to be even more. We're getting rumors of a Baten Kaitos remaster, obviously Metroid Prime 4, Pikmin 4. So there's a lot of stuff to be excited about as they transition and get ready for this next one. And then they have the big presentation where they show off what the system is and the games and everything. It's exciting. But speaking of experiences and speaking of what Nintendo's going to do for the next generation, check out my Nintendo Switch 2 video that I made not too long ago, where I go over all the different stuff where I've talked about, and it seems based off of reports that is exactly what's going to be happening. And of course, if you want more information on Fire Emblem Engage and everything to do with that game, make sure you check out my video there. It'll be all in the links in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and we'll see you guys for the next one. Peace out.